In this lesson, we're going to look at how to append data to an existing file. I've created a Delphi project, I've created a form, and I have a button, append data to a file. Let's code on this button. I'm going to create a file variable. I'll stick to T file, which is of data type text file. I need to add data, so I'm going to create, keeping to my theme, I'm going to create a string variable as country. Assign file, T file, comma, and the name of the text file that exists on your hard disk or any secondary storage device. In this case, I've got a text file that I've saved called countrynames.txt. So instead of using rewrite, I'm going to use append. So I'm going to append T file. But before I append T file, I need to check if countrynames.txt does exist. And to do a check, I could use an if statement, and I could check using file exists. And file exists is a function that will return a Boolean value, true or false, if the file countrynames.txt exists or not. The file that I'm checking that exists is countrynames.txt. It must be spelled correctly. Countrynames.txt. Sorry. If file exists countrynames.txt, I'm checking if it is equal to true. If it is equal to true, then I want to append. So what happens if this file cannot be found, if it does not exist? If it does not exist, I can then put in an else, and I could rewrite and create a new file and then add data to the new file, which is T file. It would be nice to write an error message, so let's do that. And let's write an error message, putting a shell message. And I could use a user-friendly message to say, for instance, file not found. But note, before an else, I do not have a semicolon. And within this structure, I only have one statement. So there's no need for a begin and end here. But in my else, I have compound statements. So there is a need for a begin and an end. So you must have a begin and an end. So file exists checks if countrynames.txt does exist. If it exists, it's going to add data to the existing file, that is your physical file stored on secondary storage, and it's going to add at the end of the file. If this if statement evaluates to false, it will go into the else, it will display a user-friendly message, and it will create a new file. So we are assuming that if it exists, we are now going to add data to the end of the file. So let's add some data to the end of the file. I'm going to use a for loop for I we can add how many countries we want to the end of that file. So just say if I want to add 2 countries to the end of the file, I'll run my loop from 1 to 2. Okay, and using an input box, I could say S country assignment statement. Prompt message again, I could say, please enter a country name. And what I want to do with that country name is I want to add it to the text file using write line. So I could say write line T file, comma, yes, country. So after I have added to the file, very important, I need to close the file. So I'm going to say close file, T file. I could put a user-friendly message, for example, show message, and say, for example, in a string literal, data successfully added to the file. Okay, so let's look at what happens when we run the program. So when I run this code and I click on append, let's enter some country names. India, one of my favorite countries in the world, and South Africa, another one of my favorite countries in the world. And I say OK. Data successfully added to the file. Click on OK. Let's look at what happened in the physical file that is added, that is stored in this folder. Open country names.txt, and I've added India and I've added South Africa. So I have a list of existing countries, I have an existing text file. So it worked with the scenario where the text file exists. Let's look at the scenario where the text file does not exist. Let's delete this text file and let's look at what happens if that text file does not exist. Would it actually go in here into a show message? Would it recreate a file? Let's see what happens. I'm going to run this program again. And I'm going to click on append, file not found. Okay. So let's enter a country. I'm going to enter South Africa. Now let's put South Africa and let's put Brazil. Data successfully added to the file. So let's look at what happens here. So when I open this file and I open country names.txt, I've got South Africa and I've got Brazil. So because the file did not exist, all it did was recreate a file and I was able to enter data into the file. Okay, so what happens now that that file actually exists? If I say append data to the file and enter another country name, for example, Canada, and I entered Argentina. Okay, data successfully added to the file. Okay, let's check what happens to that file. The file did exist, and when I opened it, Canada and Argentina are successfully added to the file. Thank you, students, for listening. I'm very eager to do my next lesson on reading data to a text file.